It's time for Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast from the Spacebook for the Fandom Podcast Network, with me, Dan Hadley, Birmingham's king of the geeks, and your main news anchor this time. It's okay, I did say anchor, I did. Now, if you're new to this show, wondering what we're all about, or you've heard it all before, we're still the same playful, free-speaking, deliberately eclectic show for everybody, whatever decade or century you started watching, reading, or listening along to the ongoing adventures of our hero, Doctor Who. We talk about it all on this show. All views are encouraged, and there could even be a little merriment along the way. So come and step into our TARDIS and share this journey together here with us on Type 40. Yes, welcome to the show, everybody. At the end of a massive news dump of a week, 2 weeks, sort of, tracking the time zones as we go along. It never seems to calm down, does it? Lots of excitement out there in the air. We'll be taking stock of all of that and doing what fans do best, sort of chewing through it all, getting a little bit obsessive, and driving each other nuts with theories and speculation. With my crack newsroom full of time agents. I'm going to bring those on right now, I think. Yes, first of all, the man who's been on this particular journey with me since the beginning, really, in the beginning of this era, before she even fell to earth. Yes, it must be the Fandom Podcast Network's very own Mr. Kyle Wagner.
What is up, Mr. Hadley?
Hi,
I hear there's some serious time rips going on, some cracks. Things are definitely wibbly wobbly in the Doctor Who universe these days.
Things are shaking up, aren't they? There are cracks appearing everywhere, cracks in the armor and in the media. I can barely, every time I look at the internet, there's some outlandish speculation. It's either completely ridiculous or it's utterly sublime, or obviously somewhere in the middle. But it started again, Kyle.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you said it. Type 40 kind of started just before the time Jodie took over as the Doctor. We've been on this ride together for a while. So yeah. It's been an interesting ride, but some of the rumors are out there are kind of out there. But you know what? There's some of them I wouldn't mind seeing some credence and actually come up to them, even though I know it's a long shot. Just so you know, if you look over my shoulder, this is such a big piece of news that our official FPNet mascot, Tummy Who, has joined us for this podcast.
Needs to know. The feline community of Doctor Who fans out there need to know everything that we've got to say on this matter. Yeah, because it was silly season. Now it's simply sort of frantic season, I think, as people pick their way through little rumours that do sort of seem to appear wherever fans congregate about what could possibly be true or not. But I know the very man who can really shine some light on what is more feasible than not. He's probably the most industrious and certainly the loudest Doctor Who voice on YouTube. Welcome back to Type 40's Fila Betkin, the rabbi from another planet.
Hello, how are you? By the way, Carl, I realised why I couldn't remember when that I was on a show with you before. You changed your couch, right? That's a different. Yeah. That's what it was. I got to see everybody in context. We've done it with us. Listen, we're talking about route rumors. I just got a bunch of new rumors about the new direction, and they are chillingly credible. They all make complete sense. I'll look forward to sharing with you later on the stream. But
Kyle, if you will change the desktop theme without consulting your fellow Time Lords, then confusion is bound to.
Well, sometimes we have those emergency regenerations, and they just happen. I can't control them.
So we've got our correspondents here from America and from Israel. I think now we need a top entertainment pundit, screenwriter, producer, and director, and big old mega geek Ian David Diaz.
Hello.
Well, listen, if you can't find a good media pundit, I'm sure he will help you find one, right? Is that right, Mega Geek? Maybe. Got nothing else on? I don't know.
In a way, guys, there's little actual news coming from the BBC. They're very, very tight-lipped about this, but then again, they're always tight-lipped. Strangely enough, though, despite that, there's still quite a lot to unpack. Right after I remind everybody out there, what have I got to remind them of? Yes, all the various bits and bobs all the essential information. If you'd like to do some real-time traveling of your own, each and every edition of this show, past, present, and future, is just a tap or two away if you know where to look on the device of your choice. And there'll be more of that, about all of that, a little bit later on, as well as when we make contact with the matrix of all knowledge that we call the Fandom Podcast Network for full details about what's the talk of all the other multiverses on all the other shows over there. Okay, yeah, I think it's time we dipped into the headlines, everybody, and found out the truth from the rumour in the Doctor Who world. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, throughout the last 12 months plus covering Doctor Who, we've scaled back our news coverage on Type 40 for a few reasons, really. I mean, it's largely because under the stewardship of Chris Chibnall, and I use that phrase very generously, it's been a practical news blackout, hasn't it? That's the method that Mr. Chibnall favours when handling us, the waiting audience. Usually until around 2 weeks at best before the transmission of new episodes, we know absolutely nothing. So there's never a great deal to talk about whenever we do think about news.
You know what? This latest round of insanity, I think, has shed some light on that. I don't think it's some marketing ploy where he's trying to hold back information.
No.
I think he just absolutely hates it with every fiber of his being, and then he just does it at the last minute because he has to. But with the big news about Weeping Angels being in this series. That should have been a news item. They could have got a lot of play out of that. Instead, it was Stephen Moffat who revealed it in an offhand Instagram post. There's just so. I mean, the marketing that went in the last few weeks is shockingly awful. And the marketing is maybe worse than the writing. And the writing's insanely bad, right? You had Comic-Con.
We can't even blame the pandemic because it's always been like this, isn't it?
No, exactly. Look, you had Comic-Con, right? The big Comic-Con, and they had the huge announcement. Oh, we got a mystery guest. You got to tune in. We got to tune in. Who is it? Is it Tom Baker? Is it David Tennant? It's who? It's what's his face? And look, the extra from Game of Thrones. What?
Yes.
And no mention of leaving. No mention of Weeping Angels. We've seen the pictures of the Sontarans. We've seen the Weeping Angels. We've seen the Daleks. We don't know. Everybody knows. Okay, you're not fooling a freaking anybody.
Okay, hold on.
Underwhelming doesn't cover it, does it? Ian?
So I got some information from my source, and it seems this friend of mine said this is true. She says you can take this to the bank. But I'm telling you now, take it at a pinch of salt because I'm just getting it from someone that I've known forever. I haven't seen her in ages. She said that he got marched in, and he was told that it's not working. You have to go.
Listen, if the BBC want money, they should have made that a pay-per-view event. I would have paid to see that.
Right, so that's one of the reasons why he wasn't saying much on the Comic-Con panel thing.
Did he know by then, you think, or not?
Yes, he according to my source, he knew, and Jodie knew. So Jodie's an actress; she can put on a show, but Chibnall can't. So you can see he tried to put it on the show, but that's why he wasn't speaking much. I don't know if it's true. Again, I'm telling you what I've just been told.
It's got the ring of truth.
I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's true. Sorry.
That brings us right where we were when I last spoke to Kyle, because it was a few weeks ago on the show, and myself, you, Kyle, Sarah Graham, Starry-Eyed Girl, and Kevin Wright. So we were in talking about the general sort of state of all fandoms at the time, but specifically talking about what could possibly be coming at Comic-Con 21. Because they'd said that there was going to be a surprise drop. So, Kyle, did you feverishly wait for the Doctor Who panel? And what did you think about it all?
To say that I wasn't surprised by the lack of a surprise drop. This is your surprise drop. No, don't think so. Wasn't surprised. I have a little bit of news too. There is actually a tiny bit of American influence on the decision to get Chibnall and Whittaker out as well, because Warner which has recently been sold to Discovery, who is also, of course, part of that is HBO, henceforth HBO Max. And if you remember when HBO Max first started, one of their big selling points was you're home for for current Who streaming. Yeah. This is the only place you can get it. And the streaming numbers on HBO Max for Who have not been good. And Warner is not happy about the fact that they really feel like they can't even market Who right now. And they paid a lot of money to get the streaming rights exclusively for that.
So HBO published figures.
It's not premiering on that in the US. It's going to BBC America and to AMC Plus.
But the issue being the only place to stream any of the past seasons of modern era Who is HBO Max in the US. And so the seasons are popping up there, but what's happened with Doctor Who is it's really gotten the streaming viewership in the US down, especially of the current seasons. And there's a lot of moving parts here, but they were like, hey, guys, we paid a lot of money for this. Something's got to change. And so I know BBC America's not been happy with the numbers at all the last couple of years. So I think because there's lots of rumors floating around here in the States, and there's a lot of big push coming from stateside that they want the BBC to seriously consider J. Michael Straczynski to be the showrunner.
Wow. Well, we've got that.
Really?
Well. Yeah.
Wow. I love that.
Okay, so what I wanted to ask you first, Carl, was do HBO Max, because we know Netflix don't ever publish figures, do they? Do HBO publish the figures about what's been watched in in which quantities?
No. The only streaming company that's Netflix has started because they have like a top 10, but HBO Max, which it's been kind of a weird situation because Warner Brothers really pissed off a lot of directors when they did this same day, same release for all Warner movies for 2021. So that's been an issue. Obviously, Warner just got sold to the Discovery Group here in the US. So while they have a ton of money, there's that whole state of influx. But Doctor Who, when HBO Max first started, that was going to be one of the big selling points. Hey, your only place in the US to stream new air Doctor Who. And it's just not because of the response to the current season, current creative team, and a few other things. Doctor Who has gone in the US from this just big booming thing to nobody talks about it anymore.
Right.
There's the diehard fans.
And did the Comic Con panel change that in any way, Kyle?
No. The Comic Con panel didn't register. The biggest problem right now.
Carl, just let me get this straight. You're telling me John Bishop didn't rack them in Philadelphia? Really?
Who?
How can that be?
Who? It's been really interesting to watch here because it started a little bit with Capaldi, but it really once Chibnall and Jodie, there was a big surge when Jodie first joined the show and her appearance at the US Comic Con, because that was really like they just made a huge deal out of it, and it just disappeared. Like the first couple episodes hit, and then Doctor Who used to be in a day-to-day pop culture conversation in the US, like everything, like up there with Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Marvel, and it's just dropped off the edge of the cliff here in the US.
Yeah.
So the fact that you did get to meet for the first time, the international audience got to meet John Bishop properly at this event, and his character Dan West. He's got a surname now, everybody. He's got a surname. Big news. That really didn't. Did he charm the audience? Because he was the standout presence. In fact, he was the only presence, really, the only human being who seemed to have anything to say or any personality on this panel. Kyle, did that?
The problem is that the only people who watch this isn't like when Jodie showed up a couple of years ago when they had national.
What a
only
difference!
Doctor Who,
right?
or only existing Doctor Who fans watch this panel because we are still in the era of COVID and virtual panels and things like that. And truthfully, the things in the last few weeks in the US have been so bonkers with this, and the focus hasn't been on these kind of things. And in truth, I think Doctor Who, because of there is so much programming, I think Doctor Who's kind of fallen out of the general mindset of people who aren't diehard fans of Doctor Who in the United States. There's too many other things to compete.
I see. Yeah.
The biggest mistake they made, BBC made, is pulling it off Netflix. When Doctor Who was, other than getting this current era. But when Doctor Who was on Netflix with Matt Smith and David Tennant, that's when it was at its absolute height in the US, because like you have a basically attractive English guy being very Englishy, which is kind of which people like in America. But you get a lot of the Anglophile thing going on, and that's why the Americans like Downton, right? Because it's very English.
But that's the reason why they took it off, because they were, BritBox. They wanted all of it on BritBox.
Yeah. Right. And they were schmucks because they should have stayed on Netflix.
But I think you're right.
The public profile of it
yeah, but I think you're right, because if you look on Netflix and you look on Amazon, you have certain things that are both on both channels. Like you have the Bourne films on Netflix, and it's also on Amazon as well. So they should have kept it on Netflix as well as on BritBox. Do you know what I mean? I think you're right there, but
But it's not on BritBox. I thought they gave it exclusively to HBO Max, and HBO.
I don't know what's going on.
No,
but they pulled it off Netflix.
Yeah.
Here's how it works. In the US, the only streaming service within the US is HBO Max.
Right.
You can get BritBox, but you can only get Classic Who on BritBox here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so they thought that this was one of the pillars of HBO Max, was supposed to be, because they had Game of Thrones and they were going to have Doctor Who as their two big draws. And Game of Thrones they destroyed, and Doctor Who was destroyed, and I think that led to the Warner Brothers slate being released straight onto HBO Max.
Well, that and COVID, which a lot of people to this day say, why HBO Max and Warner's didn't make the decision to only do it for the first 6 months and say we're going to reevaluate, because Warner Brothers has successfully destroyed what was supposed to be their tentpole movie of this year in Dune by doing what they did, because and they're probably not. They made the creator of that film so angry that he doesn't even want to associate. But Doctor Who was
incredible, by the way.
Yeah, it looks visually stunning.
Incredible.
Yeah, but in this case, in the US, the Doctor Who was already kind of falling off because, and I've talked about this before, in the US, Matt Smith was the Doctor. I mean, Tennant was very popular, but Matt Smith was kind of like, we felt like that was the Doctor we most in the US identified with. People liked Capaldi, but he wasn't quite the same connection. And then going to Jodie, there was this big hype thing because of what she did, and they really tried to hype it in the US with having Jodie make that appearance at Comic-Con, showing up at Ashley Eckstein's fashion show, kind of giving us a really first in the flesh look of Jodie as the Doctor, and then they failed to follow up on it.
Yeah,
and
they had every opportunity in the world. I just recorded a video. I'm posting it. It'll be a few days ago while time this goes out. Saying that there was an article that said Jodie Whittaker never had a chance as Doctor Who. Excuse me, nobody had more of a chance.
She was given
anything ever than Jodie Whittaker and Doctor Who.
They cleared the TV schedule for that show.
Yeah. They had everything in the palm of their hands, right? All they had to do was deliver a halfway entertaining show, and they didn't. And it's their failure completely. And the enormity of the failure is coming out now. I think we're probably in 5 years from now we're going to start seeing articles about Star Trek, like as same things. Like Star Trek's going to have no impact whatsoever of another few years of. Alex Kurtzman and whatever, Discovery, whatever bollocks he's doing. It's going to be exactly the same thing. Probably the MCU as well.
You mentioned Game of Thrones there. Of course, the surprise. The big surprise was that Jacob Anderson from Game of Thrones
basically they needed someone to replace Captain Jack, so they created this character to replace Captain Jack. And let's face it, right? He's just Captain Jack, but he's black and he's got dreads. That's it.
It's Captain Jack got better because now he's black.
That does definitely appear to be the case to me.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how we fell through this weird black hole into this strange mirror universe where we're all obsessed with race all of a sudden, right?
Who's in charge of drama on BBC? Who's in charge of drama? Right, I got the feeling that he is the one that the blocking block. I think Davies wants to go past this and recast a male as the Doctor, but he's the one.
You mean Tim Davie, the man, the Director General of the BBC?
Yes, because sorry, just let me finish. There's a rumor that BBC now is going to be what is it, BBC Studios, and what does Davies used to be in charge of? It's going to be a combination between.
Tim Davie used to run BBC Studios,
right?
And he was effectively headhunted for the role of Director General because of everything that he achieved at Studios. Which
what is Doctor Who under now then? It's not under the studio, is it? It's not BBC.
Well, they said in the announcement it's going to be a decision between BBC and BBC Studios.
Yeah, so the rumor is that it's going to be they're going to join forces, BBC Studio and whatever the Doctor is under. That's going to it
is still produced by BBC Cymru.
So the only stumbling block is the man in charge of drama, which is Piers Wanker, as I call him. That's the only stumbling block.
So he's got so that dovetails nicely into this. There are some Reddit rumors there which sound very, very realistic. That Piers Wenger wants to reboot Doctor Who with season 14 and aim it at a new young audience, and basically forget classic Who and Doctor Who from series 1 to 13.
I've heard that rumor as well.
They're embarrassed by it. They're ashamed of it.
Basically, what they want to do is they're going to come back big time and not give the main audience what they want. The Piers Wanker is determined to kill the fan base, the fan base, the huge fan base. He's determined.
That does seem like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. But Carl, would that make any difference to the international audience?
No. No, the international audience wants to go back to the time of the 9th, 10th, and 11th Doctor. That's what the US wants. That's what the international wants.
That's what Brazil wants. I know that.
Yeah. Well, what my question for you guys with this new character though, and obviously it's very obvious he's replacing what they probably had planned for Captain Jack. But my question is this, because Dan and I talked about it on the last time I was on when we were talking about fandom in general, how much of this is also reflective of the cancel culture that's been hitting John Barrowman, at least over in the UK, because we still love him in the US. We welcome him with open arms.
Yeah, he's just been booked for a new convention, in fact. That's how much the Americans still love John Barrowman.
Yeah. The thing is that poor John, he's probably looking forward to going back to Doctor Who. But do you know what, right? I think we've done him a favor, because this era and the new era that's coming up, I don't think any one of us is going to be happy what's happening next with Doctor Who. And I think he's just dodged a bullet here.
I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, listen, we were all excited at first because the BBC realized there was finally a public admission that it was wrong. They'll say it wasn't working, it wasn't coming together. And they knew that Jodie Whittaker, Chris Chibnall wasn't wrong, but they didn't know what's wrong about them. They just knew they were wrong, and they're like, let's try again doing exactly the same thing.
Rabbi, that's the rumor. I always say that I never really have any sources. I just occasionally hear things from people that I trust implicitly. The only thing that I've ever heard that's come to me was around 18 months ago. And it was that the BBC had no idea why it wasn't working. They just knew. They definitely knew that it wasn't working.
They know why it's not working. They know why it's not working. Seriously, they know why, right? And that's why they called Chibnall in the office. Right. So as I said, take this with a pinch of salt. They called him in the office, said it's not working with a female doctor. We have to do something about this. And it was left as just that. And they said, sorry, you have to go. And then I think I don't know whether Jodie was in there at the same time. But
I hope she was.
I don't know. I think it was
doubt it, but I hope she was.
So, given that 2 weeks ago the Comic-Con panel happened and it barely created any ripples at all, we got this new character Vinda, played by an actor who seems like a lovely fella, but hardly a name that anybody ever recognised. So little things like that just didn't create any fuss at all. Now, after the big announcement from a couple of weeks ago, not only is all the Comic-Con stuff, Kyle, whatever they said about John Bishop, Jacob Anderson, all this stuff, it's just taking care of business now. Now that we know that the production team is leaving and it is so anticipated, whatever, not just the Comic-Con stuff, but pretty much whatever gets revealed about this short run of 6 episodes we're getting in the autumn, it's just gonna seem like white noise to people, isn't it?
The issue is it's going to be the exact opposite of what happened when David Tennant left Doctor Who, where everybody tuned in because they loved him so much they wanted to see how he was going to go, and then they cleaned the slate. With this, people are going to say, I'm just why am I going to invest in this when I don't really care about it anyway? I'll just wait till they clean the slate. People might watch the last episode that they know Jodie is in because they want to have that feeling of, hey, let's see how they're going to close this out and what we're going to possibly be leading into. The issue is this: nobody cares. That is the damage that Chris Chibnall, I think, and I put so much of it more on Chibnall than I do Whittaker. The damage that Chris Chibnall has done to the Doctor Who franchise is that I should say nobody. The vast majority doesn't care. There are those people who do love this current run. All the more power to them. You like what you like. You're more than allowed to do that. But I think there's a lot of people out there who are just like, get this over with. Get me back to some Doctor Who storytelling that I know and love.
The idea that they're aiming for a new audience just speaks volumes of where they're going.
I agree, because that wasn't that the whole thing we heard when Jodie and Chris Chibnall came? Oh, we're aiming for a new audience. Yeah, it's a big deja vu sense here.
I mean, look at this. It's like, this is so subtle. This is absolutely so subtle. Like, what could be the messaging they're trying to tell us?
Because of course we did get this trailer, didn't we? So this was 42 seconds of new Doctor Who that nobody had ever seen before, topped off by a new rendering of the logo, now as on the nose as you could possibly ever be. It sort of inset into this grotesque rainbow that they insist on using as a motif now, with the letters it returns later this year. I'm struggling to think of anybody left who cares about this run coming up.
I'll tell you their demographic they're going for, right? It's a strong one. It's
hate watchers.
Sorry,
hate watchers.
Hey, well, there's them. They're probably the big group. No, hate watchers. Actually, Weight Watchers. If you put weight on, you're going to watch Doctor Who this week. People will lose a ton. No, it's like Guardian granola eating mothers that want to tie their little boys they put in a dress down to a chair in front of the TV to feel stunning and brave, right? That's exactly who they are. There's about 17 of them, and I think they got them all down, but they're not going to buy any merchandise, and they probably won't watch it either.
Can anybody remember a single frame of this trailer that they dropped the other day?
I remember them flying. That's the only bit I remember.
That's about it. You know, the other people who are going to watch this are the people who like to watch a car crash, because that's what this is at this point.
Yeah,
it is a car crash.
And YouTube.
I'm looking forward to it for my channel. I think this is going to be
YouTube.
I think this is going to be glorious. I mean, I think this is going to be okay. The other rumors I heard, the script for episode 1 is the worst thing that anybody's ever read. And this how bad can it be?
Rabbi, that's not true. They said the second episode is the worst one.
Come on.
No, the second episode was okay, and the third episode.
Oh, was it the third? The third, yeah. Sorry.
Wait.
The first one's awful.
If Chibnall's involved, they're just all awful at this point. And the problem is Chibnall, and Chibnall, instead of realizing his mistakes, he's just going to pound that like the Hindenburg, and he's going to go down with the ship. I am of the true belief that in about 5 years, there's going to be about 5 years. There's going to be a serious let loose by Jodie Whittaker that is just going to throw Chris Chibnall under the bus in ways that are just going to be spectacular.
Yeah. But there's this other rumor that they've brought in a ghostwriter. So they shot the first 3 or something like that, or 5. When they shot the first 3 or 5, I can't remember. They looked at the rushes and they realized it was so bad, and they brought in this ghostwriter. And then they went, nobody knows who the ghostwriter is, to try and pep it up. It
must be Paul Cornell. It can only be.
I don't know.
Really?
Wait. Guys, let me ask you this. Stephen Moffat has been circling the Doctor Who realm a lot lately and taking shots.
Oh, he knows. He's not interested.
He's bored.
Yeah. Do you guys think that the Comic-Con panel was Chibnall's last chance to show some social media impact and excitement? And when that didn't happen, they announced their exit a few days later. That's highlight.
They knew before.
You listen to the thing that he put out in the press about how Jodie changed, it was with pleasure working with stuff. That really sounds like one of those things they put out in the press from a company because the company's losing. If you go back in history, they've always done that with companies that are failing. They always put out something, we're still okay, life, there's still life, and then they die. Do you know what I mean? So that thing that he wrote about the whole era and how wonderful it was, and we made a pact and all that, it just stinks.
Well, it's media.
Of them making up something so that they can cover their arse. That's what
it's PR and media speak, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah.
It's nothingness. It's a nothing burger, as they say. So let's just let's go with this. So this was the news then that broke on the 29th, Thursday the 29th of July. And it went something like this. Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker to leave Doctor Who in a trio of specials. That's the big headline there. And I think there's lots of us have been hearing rumours about Jodie Whittaker's departure since January. That had leaked. We've got our fingers crossed that would mean Chris Chibnall would go too. But I think we were all still kind of aware, weren't we, that we dare not even believe that we'd get the double whammy there, because obviously he's the one who's making all these creative decisions. He's the one who miscast the Doctor in the first place. He's the one that can't build any characters. He's the one that can't seem to manage generating any excitement around this show at all. In the 21st century, in the age of multimedia, in the age of social media, the thing looks like it's on autopilot constantly. Long-time Type 40 companions can doubtless imagine what particular kind of tears a lot of us were shedding when we heard this news. Yes, it was tears of absolute, unrestrained joy when I saw this first break onto teletext I was looking at, on the red button teletext that's over on the BBC. I couldn't believe my eyes that the day had finally come. This divisive, unpopular era was finally on marked time, even if it is going to be a little while yet. But where did you first hear about this, Kyle?
Actually, I saw it on social media, and I sent it to you immediately to find out if it, from your side, if it was true. And then I actually got the BBC report of it, because I got it from one of the more questionable. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. And then I sent that to you to confirm. And then before I heard back from you, I saw the BBC report. And I think it's so interesting. Usually when a doctor leaves, they interview the person who's leaving. They make some kind of comment about it. And there's just, it's been dead from Jodie Whittaker, the Jodie Whittaker standpoint. And I think what I'm seeing from how this has been handled, I kind of just think Jodie is just like, I'm just walking away from this. I've got theories that I think it's going to come out more and more that she was basically a tool for Chris Chibnall and a tool for the BBC, and was sold the line of what it was going to be, and then they entrapped her, and then she was just stuck. And
now you've mentioned that, and going back to what Ian said earlier on about all this sort of this multimedia speak, it all just sounds like it's been written for them, because there's a very strange statement from Jodie Whittaker about size 13 shoes and all sorts of stuff, which just sounds, it just, Rabbi, I know you've got your head in your hands, but
it's all embarrassing. I mean, it's so
it's embarrassing.
Embarrassing. Like, you feel bad for them. They just I don't know. I mean, it's
there's no sincerity to any of it somehow, is there?
Yeah, and it being 2021, there is zero. I mean, absolutely zero patience for media speak. Nobody believes anything.
Nobody believes it.
But you know what's interesting about this whole thing? I speak to a lot of Doctor Who fans, and I say, but maybe they're going to double down, and a lot of them say, no, we still have faith in Doctor Who and stuff like that. And I always say to them, look around you. Look what happened to the other IPs. They're not stopping. They're doubling down on everything. Do you think this is going to be any different? Do you think the attitude of where all of this is coming is going to be any different to this show? Well, personally, I think that's going to happen, and then they're going to double down. That's what I think. But
the hope is, because they've been forced into this. And it's something they've really wanted to do, and they've been forced into it. Maybe they've been forced into a complete capitulation, right?
Yeah.
That's the hope. Who knows? Who knows? It could be anything.
This statement from the BBC about the departure of the star and the showrunner of Doctor Who with these specials that are going to top off the era. It's full of the strangest sort of comparisons. There's a big flex in there about how the 2020 series won the Best Science Fiction Show award beating The Mandalorian, Lucifer, The Boys, all these really prestigious shows for the Best Moment Awards. So they build that up in this press release before telling us that it was just a vote conducted at radiotimes.com. So this isn't the Golden Globes we're talking about. And there's lots of other great sweeping statements. A bit from Chris Chibnall himself here, who said, Jodie and I made this 3-year and out pact with each other at the start of this once-in-a-lifetime blast. So now our shift is done and we're handing back the TARDIS keys. It just doesn't ring true, does it? Yeah.
That sounds like it was written by someone who actually knows how to write. That's stuff.
That's the giveaway. But it was a 5-year mission. I remember James Strong saying that it was before he wasn't given any work directing it, saying, "Oh no, Chibnall has a 5-year plan that he's looking forward to." Yeah, right.
He has been in the role for 5 years. He got the role of showrunner in early January 2016. It was announced. Obviously, he may have even been speaking to them, therefore, in, say, 2015. But on the news of his departure, he topped it off with, I wish our successors, whoever the BBC and BBC Studios choose, as much fun as we've had. They're in for a treat. Never mind the audience, never mind the long-suffering fan base. They've had a blast.
He didn't write that.
Of course he believed.
He did not write that. It's just it's obvious someone in the press wrote that. You know,
right.
And you see, he's been hiding ever since this show started. From the very first episode to the last episode of the first season, he's been in hiding. None of the other showrunners were like that. I'm talking about New Who now. They were out there. They were talking to people. They were like celebrating. They were all in your face. They had the making of and stuff like that. But Chibnall, he's been so quiet. He's been hiding because he knows this is not working. And he knows he didn't have the power to actually make it go beyond what he wanted. So there you go. Anyway, Kyle? Sorry, I'll stop.
I want to play a little devil's advocate here because I do think this is something I'm seeing in a lot of science fiction and a lot of fandom stuff in general. I don't think Chibnall's a great writer, but I'm starting to think, with very few exceptions, these show creators are basically being brought in and saying, you will follow our mandates, you will follow this. And they're not being allowed to write the stories they want to tell because the networks, except for one, and I'll get to that in a minute, the networks themselves are so afraid of cancel culture that they're right for what the people want right now, what the general social media populace wants right now. What the loudest voice is.
And it is a fraction of the population that even have a Twitter account, let alone live on Twitter and bombard places like the BBC, Carl.
But I'm going to flip this.
See that through. So I'm sorry, through Moffat's run. You could see you could see the beginnings of the inclusivity and diversity agenda until you got to Bill Potts, when it was just they took a great character and just made it ridiculous. And that was even with somebody who could write trying to cover it up. But you could really see that path happening
with a good writer and a great actress. You know, I think the Pearl Mackie's got so much personality and she had so much zest and truth in that part. Yeah, you can see her struggling under the weight of some of it sometimes.
But still, going on what Kyle said, right? If you were the showrunner and you were in charge and they gave you this mandate, you have to follow this, you have to follow that. You have an ace card in your sleeve. You could literally say, fuck you, I'm writing what I should think that Doctor Who should go. But if they fire him, then obviously the truth will come out. That's your ace card. So if they fire him and he's out of the contract, he can say what he wants. He can go, yeah, they fired me because they wanted this thing to be political.
Yeah,
they wanted to, you know what I mean? So you know, there's a balance there. You know, you can work that. But it seems that Chibnall was too, if that's the case, too soft to even stand up for what he believes. If that's the case, you know.
But what I think is going on there is that because more studios have that approach. If you're a writer and you think you have that ace card up your sleeve, you may not, because then you become a problem child to all these other studios.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's only one studio right now that I see that is taking chances and letting their creators actually be creative, and that's Amazon, because they have the money to say, screw you, we don't care what you think. You're still going to buy other things from us. You need us. Too bad. So sad. We're going to do what we want to do.
Yeah, you're right. Right. So I don't know.
I think that
when it comes to... they all agree with it. They're all on board with this insanity. This is religious fundamentalism. It just is.
It's hive mind.
They all
hive mind thinking.
Yeah,
they're the Borg.
They all think the same.
So
they're the Borg.
So the idea, as these two, Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall, prepare to pack their bags, they're finishing recording on this show. As we record this edition of Type 40, they have weeks left. You can count them on the fingers of one hand, the amount of weeks they have left in their roles before they depart. I can't say that I'm surprised by how any of this has played out. The reception to their entire era, the pattern of it, not just that huge tumble in the viewing figures, but the discourse around the show. Rabbi, you see this daily on YouTube. You make some sort of video content for YouTube every day on this subject, and you're as clued into the news as anybody that I know. It's very gradually changed, but it's sharply changed in the last few months, hasn't it? Since it became even possible that they were leaving, and since this announcement, again, just a week and a half, a fortnight ago. There's been another change, hasn't there, with some of the media really turning. It's been open season on Chris Chibnall in particular.
The verboten thoughts are finally allowed to be spoken, right? And all the media outlets have been saying, this is the greatest thing ever. Oh, how stunning and brave, how wonderful. They say, no, it's always been garbage. It's always been terrible. Like now it's like, well, wait a minute. Where were you for the last 3 years? I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's the same writers. It's not even the same outlets. It's the same writers saying, "Oh, well, she never really had a chance." Oh, well, like what? You were just telling me everything she did was the best thing you've ever seen.
I saw a bizarre article from the Radio Times claiming, I mean, I don't know how aware you are of the Radio Times, Carl, but they were saying that now is the time for Jodie Whittaker. She hasn't had her moment to shine. She hasn't had her big doctor moment. Now is the time to deliver. 22 episodes. This entire thing, Kyle, has the air of somebody just meeting out their contractual obligations to me now. It's all over by the shouting.
Jodie Whittaker was never going to get the chance to shine as Doctor Who. Say what you will about her performance, and there's plenty of criticism to be had there. Chris Chibnall's writing and the mandates that were on this version of Doctor Who were never going to allow Jodie to become the doctor she could have become, because the mandate they had was, we have a female doctor. That's the big thing. It's a female doctor. Yeah. Instead of, hey, not only do we have a female doctor, we have this actress who, and with stories that really developed this female doctor and that are just on par with any other doctor we've had. Instead, we've got covered with mandated scripts, things that were written with other agendas in mind, and instead of just sitting down and writing, I'm going to write Doctor Who. But this was so far from anything that Doctor Who was. I mean, I was thinking about the other day, and how many episodes did we actually even see the TARDIS? How many episodes? I mean,
very few.
Bradley Walsh and Tosin Cole ejected the minute they could. And the other thing I think about it is, usually when a doctor is leaving the show, there's some people say, "Oh, I didn't like that doctor. Thank goodness he's leaving." But it always still feels like you still celebrate that doctor who's leaving, and you thank them for the work that they did. And it just doesn't feel like we're going to have that at all this time. It's going to be
there's been insane euphoria. Right? It's that. I mean, that's the way of describing the reaction. It's just been euphoric, like, oh my god, free at last, and that's the sign you haven't done very well, right? That's a sign that maybe you haven't done very well.
Her agent was badgering her to get out. There's a rumor that her agent was telling her, "Look, you need to get out of this show. It's not doing you any good," because obviously. She wants a life outside Doctor Who. She wants to act in other roles and have a career. But I was told that, again, take it with a pinch of salt, that her agent was just telling her, leave now, And I guess this is the moment where she decided to leave. I guess
it's a strange role, isn't it? Because she was committed to this role for the best part of 18 months before she even made it onto screen. So it's completely reasonable that her representation, her professional representation I'm talking about, would wish to get her into another role to build her career, and particularly to get her away from a failing brand before anybody realizes that she's at least 50% of why it's tanked.
I think at this moment in time, she's realizing that she made a mistake, because when they started off, the tide was going.
How could one not?
Yeah, exactly. When they started off, the tide was going, strong female characters. It was this, it was that. So she just kind of played along with the stuff she said a lot of bad things that actually pissed off the fan base. But I reckon she's just a patsy in this. When I think about it, I think she's a patsy. I think she tried to do the right thing, and then now she's realizing that it was completely the wrong thing. She obviously can't speak up about it because she's under contract. And the same thing with Chibnall. He can't speak up about it as well. Chibnall may be a victim, who knows, but I doubt it.
Oh, come on.
I really doubt it.
At some point, you've got to take some bloody responsibility for yourself.
Exactly.
Look, there's this a Jewish concept says, Ein shliach b'davar avera. There is no messenger in doing a sin. Let's say somebody talks you into doing a sin, right? Somebody talks you into it. You've still done it yourself. If somebody cons you into it, you've still done it. You are responsible for it. Exactly, Chips. Exactly. And that's how you should look. Here's the thing.
You're not going to take responsibility while you're still under contract and could be committing absolute career suicide in that process. Again, I think once contracts are, I think you're going to hear a lot of different things. I think Jodie's got her share of responsibility in this, but I truly do think she was used as a tool. I think Chris Chibnall was hired, and he had the mandate, female doctor, this, and that. And then Me Too started, everything going on. And Chris says, you know what? I got the perfect person because of his ties with Jodie. And Jodie's, I'm willing to guess, almost blind loyalty to Chris Chibnall at that time.
It does seem that way. She trusts him implicitly, I think, Kyle.
If I was in Chibnall's place, I would basically try and write it in such a way that it disguises the mandate. The mandate will still be there, but it disguises it.
I don't think he's a good enough writer to do that.
Exactly my point. He is not a good enough writer. And plus, he made the mistake of hiring people that don't know about sci-fi. He hired writers that were from soaps and stuff like that. And that's the big mistake he made.
Well,
I don't know whether it was a
plenty of
cost-cutting cost. Yeah.
Plenty of them had never written any sort of scripted
there you go.
drama of any kind before for television. That was for theatre.
Virtue signaling. It was 100% about giving black people and brown people jobs writing a mainstream TV show so Chris Chibnall can feel like he's a good person.
Well, this is the way I look at it, right? This is the way I look at it, right? You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? So if it is the case that if you speak up, you're going to be blacklisted, and if you stay with the show, you're going to be blacklisted. Your career's going to be stopped anyway because the writing was so shit. I'd rather be blacklisted and do what I should have done. Exactly. Rather than just ride the train.
One option that will make it work, right? You have one option on the table.
Exactly. Yeah,
no, if you just make good episodes, then you can get away with anything, right?
Let's not forget, everybody, that Chris Chibnall had a long lead-in time to work on Doctor Who, didn't he, Kyle? He's had to actually create fewer episodes over his time than anybody else. So he's had potentially all 10 of these. These are shortened runs. It's easy to forget. We used to get 13. Now we get 10. They should have been watertight. They should have all been absolute standout classics, particularly with the 18 months in between series, shouldn't they, Kyle?
Here's the thing, and I think here's the thing, and I think this is something that it is Chris Chibnall's, the way he thinks and the way he writes. 10 episodes, the shorter amount he gets, but gets more time to tinker with it and everything, he becomes his own worst enemy. Whereas he had more time to tinker with the scripts, tinker with this, tinker with that, instead of just writing his initial idea, getting that down, getting that solid, and then just pushing it through and moving on to the next thing. He had more time to tinker, and I think that's part of Chibnall's problem. Is Chris Chibnall thinks he's too smart.
I don't know. I honestly, I think it's laziness. I mean, look at the actual plot of the motivation of the villain in Rosa, right? I didn't realize how stupid it was. And I don't know how this went past the script editor. The plot is a man from the 50th century was arrested, I think, by black people or in prison because a black person arrested him. So he figures if I go back 30 centuries, like 3,000 years, and stops Rosa Parks giving up her seat on a bus, right, by making the bus empty. If I stop there, in the next 3,000 years, there will be no change, and there will be no emancipation, nothing, no. How did that get past a freaking script editor? A first day script editor should read that and go, really? There's no. You don't think the civil rights movement would happen 10 years later? I mean, I don't know. It's like,
another example of somebody.
Anyway, gets through.
It's another example of somebody as well, because obviously Mallory Blackman wrote the majority of that. This is another writer who isn't a sci-fi writer. You know, she's a very.
But no, the reason it got through is the same reason it gets through in comic book. It's that you see, they got this United, the Captain Americas thing going on in comic books right now, and they're basically every different type. You have a black Captain America, you have a gay Captain America, you have Native American.
Everybody's Captain America,
basically. But like then they always have a backup strip about that particular Captain America has to be written by somebody with that identity, and those backup strips are unreasonably bad. Why? Because they're people with a protected identity. You can't edit them. You can't tell them no, that doesn't work. So. What was it Marjorie Blackman? What kind of, bit of an unfortunate name, but like whatever her name was, like Chibnall can't criticize her in the same way he can't write people on the progressive stack to have any faults whatsoever, which is why he writes bland, boring characters.
Well, Mallory Blackman was the last example of that sort of that lineage of writers that we've had. You know, going back to Neil Gaiman, Richard Curtis. The sort of the standout one writer per season that you would never really expect that they'd managed to have got for Doctor Who. And I've always got the impression that Frank Cottrell Boyce is another example. These people who are novelists, who are well-respected writers, who express an interest in writing for Doctor Who or a fondness for the show, and they get welcomed in and indulged. And I feel Mallory Blackman was indulged with this silly, as you say, this silly plot. But she wasn't the only one. It's one thing to indulge a writer of her prestige and caliber and with the respect of the publishing world, and another to indulge people with next to no writing credits like Vinay Patel, who barely even a writer as far that I can see. But he's actually more experienced compared to some of the other clowns that worked on this show.
Well, here's something, gentlemen, too. As I've been watching social media, I'm seeing more and more well-known writers all say they want to crack. They want to get the ship right. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Here in the U.S., there is a big push for the Doctor Who fans to get Mr. Straczynski involved in Doctor Who.
So for the people out there who don't know, Kyle, who is J. Michael Straczynski?
J. Michael Straczynski is a science fiction writer that has been with us for a very long time. He probably most known for a lot of people as the writer of Babylon 5, but he has written so many different things. He's considered one of the greatest science fiction writers currently going. He's written comics. He had a great original story called Rising Stars that was phenomenal.
That was great. That was fantastic.
He's written some great Superman.
And let's not forget, Kyle, he wrote what many consider to be one of the best books in the industry on the craft of screenwriting, didn't he?
Yeah. So you have this guy who people have went on Twitter and said, "Hey, would you take a crack at Doctor Who?" And said, "All they have to do is call me." and
they keep saying no to them.
There's a problem though. He's American.
Well, are we to that point though that it's just time?
No,
they're willing to think out of the box.
No. I agree, Kyle. I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah. I'm just saying the BBC. You know, they rejected what is his name, Stephen King's son.
Jonah Hill.
So
Joe Hill, who I think is an absolutely amazing writer in his own right. But to have J. Michael Straczynski come on, to hire him as the showrunner, I don't care who you cast as the Doctor, because you know he's not going to let somebody in that he wouldn't think could play the Doctor. I know one of the names that was kind of tied in with him was actually another female, Jodie Comer from Killing Eve. A lot of people would like, and he's like, I'd work with her. But again, I think it's time for the BBC to get off their own high horse and open the doors and say, this problem is bigger than just keeping it
We can't
in-house.
make this show. Plenty of people out there can, wherever they are in the world. I mean, to get somebody like Joe Michael Straczynski expressing interest, okay, he's a veteran of this industry, of the craft. People like Joe Hill, exciting, still pretty young, new talent, full of ideas, and really at the start of his publishing journey. And for the BBC to dismiss Joe Hill pretty much offhand, a bit like it's really difficult to excuse. You wonder how can they do that and yet be happy to indulge the likes of Ed Heim and Vinay Patel and all these other people. Well, Chris Chibnall.
Well, also they're cheaper. They're cheap as well. Because if you look at the history of BBC, they really don't know what to do with Doctor Who. They're supposed to give it a good budget, but they refuse to every time a showrunner turns up. And they just don't know what to do with it. The people in charge, they don't really know. So
when JMS, they call him out there in sci-fi circles, when JMS first expressed interest in this role, I think it was idle pie in the sky stuff for him, from him, on social media, just to see what people would say. But it seemed to catch a lot of people's imaginations, basically people who are hungry for somebody who can actually write to take over this show. And it seemed that the response that he got was bigger than he expected. So it seems that in the intervening days, he's pursued this. We've got a fresh tweet from him this morning. And he said, a question for the British folk who follow this feed. My agency has decided to nose around a little on this issue of Doctor Who, but we are having trouble. We're having difficulty navigating the BBC's hierarchical structure to even know the best person to talk to. Has anybody got any names or positions that I can pass along? So this man, he's obviously, through his representation, through his agents, they're contacting the BBC. We've got JMS. He wants to work on this show, and they're finding it, as usual, the BBC to be impenetrable bureaucrats. Right.
But he's going to cost more than anyone that they hire in England.
And he's not on board for I don't think he's probably on board for their woke moronic agenda. That systematically is alienating the British public to the point where they can't afford to make the show anymore. Right?
Yeah.
Speaking of alienating, I got to ask you guys about this too, because I think it ties into the chaos that is Doctor Who right now. What is going on with the "sorry, Peter Capaldi, we want nothing to do with you anymore" aspect? I mean, it just seems like he's being ostracized out of Doctor Who right now.
Really? I think it's the other way around. I think Peter Capaldi is saying, "I want nothing to do with Doctor Who."
Well, but I mean, yeah. Okay, well, but it seems to be a both, but it seems like for so long he was treated poorly, and now he's like, I'm just done with it. I'm walking away from it. He's not doing the 12th Doctor for Big Finish or anything. And I mean, even with all the problems, it seems like people have been like, no, I'm still going to work with Big Finish. So it tells me how bad that is.
Yeah, he wants to be involved with Doctor Who, but as I said, another rumor is that he did not want to do the last episode. He thought it was a disgrace to the first Doctor, and there's a lot of rumors about that. Yes, he basically questioned the script. He said, the first Doctor was never a sexist. He said a couple of things, yes, but why are we portraying him like that? And in the end, he's a professional. In the end, he's a professional. Yeah.
I think that's
and he decided to do it.
Idol. Yeah, I think that's starting to sound.
It could be, but I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you what I've heard. But he was obviously very upset that he got pushed. It wasn't like he walked away; he got pushed out.
I noticed from Peter Capaldi, he has been very kind of like Carl says. He's been very, very quiet over the last year or two, and you could say maybe that's professional conduct, not wishing to step on the new era.
Yeah,
and now he is speaking a little. He's only speaking about Doctor Who in a very roundabout way. And he's saying so little that the Doctor Who circus being such as it is, they're landing on it and sort of spinning his words a little bit, Kyle.
That's right.
Well, you also have to remember he's especially in the US spotlight right now because of his role in the Suicide Squad.
Right.
Where he's running around with metal curlers in his head sticking out. But I mean, because of that,
without spoiling it at all, very disappointed in the use of Capaldi in that movie.
Yeah, I will. I without spoiling it, I will agree. I agree with that. But that movie, but I mean, the movie is a very good movie. But yeah, it just seems like he's kind of back in the news, and now especially he's associated with, in my opinion, one of the hottest creators in the U.S. right now, with James Gunn. That's
Right.
gonna put you more in the news, and maybe now he feels like he has a platform with things behind him that he can voice out a little bit more about his discomfort with Doctor Who as well, especially now that Chibnall and Whittaker are leaving. Maybe he feels like now's the time, if I'm going to say something and bring the light of problems going on there, now's the time to do it.
They're all very professional, you know. You can see that Peter wants to speak up, but he's very professional, you know. As I said in that last episode, he disagreed with a lot of stuff, but he's professional. He does his job. He gets paid, and that's what he does. Same thing with Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill totally disagreed with the new Star Wars, the Disney Star Wars he was in. But you know, he's a professional. He's a professional. He did the job. That's it. Yeah, because that's what they do. They're actors. They're hired to do a job. They do the job the best of their ability, and they move on. And so that's what Peter did. So he has to protect his own. He has to protect his future jobs. He can't speak out now and spoil. Right. You know, his move to the top or to get more jobs. He needs to be professional about it, and that's what he's doing. Same thing with all the other doctors, from David Tennant to Matt Smith to, well, Chris Eccleston's a different story, but they're professionals. You know, they don't go out and, splurge and say what's on their mind, because they know they'll get into trouble. So yeah, that's why they're quiet. And
I suppose, Peter Capaldi's been an actor for a long time. He knows the dance, knows what to say and what not to say.
Yeah,
I think that's perfectly reasonable. And the fans sort of joining dots. That doesn't necessarily, because not every how things sound to an untrained ear, and particularly when they've been through the filter of say the Radio Times or Metro or whoever's quoting him to say whatever, you're not going to get something come out that's going to be the actor's pure intentions. I think that the only real way to find out how, or to get some idea of how he really thinks, are to look at the clips that do make it online from when he was on Radio X, I think it is, with Chris Moyles a couple of weeks ago. He talked about Doctor Who a little there, and he very, very warm smile on his face. No malice at all. No. And when he does speak about, he was speaking about audio drama rather than Big Finish. He was speaking about making audio drama at a place, as an institution like the BBC, where I would imagine it's still like making the Archers. So you've got the Foley artist in one corner, everybody sort of stood around in some pretty dank room, I don't know, and people sort of extrapolated from that this man will never work with Big Finish, and I think it's just a case of filling up.
Well, but you have to juxtapose it with a few days later they recast the 12th Doctor with Jake Dudman.
Yeah,
Big Finish. So that's a bit. I think the two things together sounds like it's saying a little bit more than that, right? It's like I got that first 12th Doctor adventure set with Jake Dudman narrating it, and his take on the 12th Doctor was great as a narrator, like a book on tape, but he didn't sound in any way, shape, or form like him. And the other people they've recast, generally speaking, like John Culture as the Brigadier sounds perfect. John Curry as the War Doctor sounds perfect. I like Tim Treelaw. I can fool my brain into thinking he's a third Doctor. Not so much Sadie Miller being Sarah Jane Smith, but what's the name? Caroline John's daughter was all from the first one, and now she's done a couple more. She sounds kind of more like Liz Shaw to me now. But like this is like him saying I'm not really interested in audio drama is a little bit low rent for me. And then a couple of days later, them coming out with the recasting news. It seems to be it builds together to say something more than that.
A little on the nose. Maybe you're right. Yeah, I mean, I feel that as the time continues on from we've heard about the creative showrunner departing, the creative force behind Doctor Who and the star. I've never seen this before. Obviously, people are speculating, as Kyle said, about showrunners and about possible stars. We expect that. It's Doctor Who. But I have never heard people speculate and hunger for an incarnation of the Doctor, a past incarnation of the Doctor, to come back and kind of reclaim the show, and more to the point, to retcon what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years. But there is a definite appetite out there for Capaldi to take back the lead in the actual ongoing show.
I don't know.
I think
there absolutely
it's
is.
unlikely,
And there's a lot of room. I mean, between series 9 and 10, you got a massive, I don't know, few 100-year gap of 12th Doctor adventures that we haven't seen. He really deserves another 2 years in the role. He just so much deserves it. I doubt we're going to see it, but wouldn't that be wonderful?
I think I would be tempted to just to not even slot it in there. I'd have him come back, claim the series back, to the shock of Yaz to sort of emerge out of the vortex as the one true Doctor. As the one true Doctor, back from the dead. It turns out the character that we've been watching over the last 3 years, turns out that's not been the Doctor at all. It's actually been the Valyard the entire time. So
that would make sense. Well, there was that book I did a review of the first half of about a week ago. Where a writer essentially did that, and it's pretty darn good. Have you seen this? Let me share the screen.
Never. It's not really going to work when we put the audio out. Hang on. What's it we've got? Okay, so what's this? Explain to us what this is then, Rabbi.
So this guy's got a YouTube channel. It's Alex. Dr. Alex is his YouTube channel, and he does it as a book on tape. This thing called Season 12, and the first chapter essentially, from the character's point of view, starts the minute at that Twice Upon a Time ends. Starts right from there, and it gets rid of Jodie's Doctor and gets us back to Capaldi really quickly in a really good way, in a way that really generally works. The writers, he really nails the speech patterns of Capaldi's Doctor, and he has other characters. He has the first Doctor in it, Romana's in it, and he really gets the characterization of everybody really, really damn well. I look, it's not perfect. There are some things that I disagreed with or I didn't think about, but this is you can go find his channel. It's fantastic. You should have him on, by the way. He's a great guest.
But have you ever seen so much creativity surrounding one particular past incarnation of the Doctor?
No,
Rabbi?
No. Why? Because this. However much we thought that Jodie was hated, I think it's coming out that she was hated a lot more, right? I thought it was kind of like 50-50, 60-40, 70-30. It looks more like it was 95-5 at this point, right? The minute that they were gone, the knives came out instantly. It seems to be that I've never seen it. I've never seen elation at somebody's leaving like this before, right? Have you? I don't think so.
And it's disappointment as well, isn't it? It's pure disappointment that the stories, the possibilities, Kyle. Remember the possibilities that we first talked about when the gender swap was employed, and we speculated on this. And I always had my doubts. I never thought it was necessary, and I had a mind that it probably wouldn't work. But I was open to persuasion. Because yourself, Kyle, and Norm, who was on the show then with us as well, you had plenty of ideas and plenty of enthusiasm, and I had to admit that there were some grounds. And I understand that you, Rabbi, you were also you weren't against the female Doctor either.
No, I thought it would be great. I was really on board. I can't believe how bad it is.
I think that's.
I think it would.
Kyle,
Sorry, I'd just like to say, I think it would have worked if they basically treated it right. If they took out all that stupid agenda, made the Doctor feminine, long hair, a great costume that was feminine as well as being the Doctor. And if they, Jodie, as far as I'm concerned, she's not a bad actress, but she's terrible in this role. I would have cast someone different. I would have made sure that she was very, very feminine, just to push the whole point that now the Doctor's a female, had really great, storylines, get some sci-fi writers in, stuff like that. Then it would have worked, in my opinion. It would have worked.
The wrong actress or actor in this role means they may as well not even be there. I don't think the part has ever been miscast before. Not.
Yeah, well, it has. Yeah, it has.
No, I don't feel it has. I think you can only miscast
Sylvester McCoy?
Exactly. You can only.
Exactly. Okay, 1 second. I have to take issue.
You can only miscast this role by casting somebody who A, has no natural eccentricity, and B, who isn't prepared to put the work in. Sylvester McCoy delivered on
Yes, he did. He did, but he was still wrong. He was still wrong, in my opinion.
The difference is they could have, they could have found better with Sylvester McCoy, but they could have found a lot worse. Somebody like Jodie Whittaker, who was not willing to put the work in and who lacked that natural eccentricity.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right.
I think again, this is all things that I think there's still when people are out of contracts and people are out of positions, we're going to get more on this. I was very excited even by the casting of Jodie, not because I mean she was decent in Broadchurch, but I actually liked what she brought when she did Attack the Block, and I'm like, I thought she had the ability to make a decent doctor. The problem is that again, I think she was brought in as a tool. The only thing they were concerned about is we have a woman in the role. They didn't care who it was. They just had a woman in the role, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, we have Jodie here, who people know from Broadchurch, people know from Attack the Block, so we get some people in, feel a comfort level. I think Jodie was given. I don't think Jodie was ever given proper direction for Doctor Who. The only time and then when she finally got a chance to work with somebody who could help her understand the role of Doctor Who and probably made an effort to help her understand that was when John Barrowman was back as Captain Jack Harkness, because there did feel like a little bit more natural Doctor between the
no way. Totally disagree with you. No way. There was no chemistry between those two characters whatsoever. I actually watched some of that because I was going to go on Dan's channel and talk about it. I couldn't get through. I got through 10 minutes and that was enough for me. But when they met in the jail, it was so obvious that Barrowman and her had no chemistry whatsoever. They didn't care what they were doing. They just did it. No way. I totally disagree with that. Barrowman. Don't even get me started. I'll stop.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, that was one of the rare occasions in this entire era where one of the it wasn't even a decades-long presence in Doctor Who, but where something recognisable, because for the entirety of Series 11, the monsters, the setups, the recurring characters, they weren't even mentioned, let alone on screen. As soon as you start bringing those elements on screen, you sort of you populate the Doctor Who universe. You remind us of the fabric behind it, the show we've been watching up to then, Kyle. But by bringing across Captain Jack and the Daleks, it kind of makes the character of the Doctor, as this really sort of thinly sketched version of the Doctor, disappear into the background, because they just don't. They're not formidable. They're not whole. It doesn't feel the multifaceted character that we've been watching, played by Matt Smith, played by Peter, played by David, played by Chris, everybody else.
But the other aspect of this, and this is something I truly believe, except for maybe 2 castings in the entire run of this current era of Doctor Who, this show has been horribly miscast from the start. Because I do think Sacha Darwin as the Master was actually good casting. I liked him as the Master. I liked what they did there. But I mean, otherwise, I mean, for the most part, this show was horribly miscast. And the people, there was no energy. Anybody who came on the show, nobody had energy. And I think it was discouraged for them to have energy.
I think Bradley Walsh had a bit of energy.
Well, Bradley Walsh was my other point.
Bradley Walsh had natural charisma and warmth and the baggage of being somebody that
he should have been the Doctor.
Well,
they've done the same with John Bishop again. This is how lazy they've been. They've done exactly the same now. They are bringing along John Bishop's audience. They're sort of guaranteed banking on people who, like John Bishop, will turn up in the same way that they knew that people who, I like Bradley Walsh, I'll never miss the chase. Oh, he's on that now. Oh, okay, I'll watch that. It's exactly it's the lowest hanging fruit. They don't have to bother building a character for either Bradley or John, because they come with their own built-in character. The way that Bonnie Langford did, you could say, in 1986. It's no better and no worse than that. And so Bradley came. When Bradley came to the show, he came with the ability to be Bradley, and that was largely it. Tosin Cole comes with next to nothing. He's just not a seasoned enough actor to polish the kind of turds that he was given in script form. Mandip Gill, who I've always said has been pretty hungry, particularly during Series 11 and through parts of Series 12, you could see it too, hungry to get good work. I don't think she'd even know it if she was to see it now. I don't think she'd be able to recognise it somehow. But you could see an eagerness there, and in every quarter, Chris Chibnall has let them down to the point where, as you said, Kyle, first chance they could get, the very first chance they're out of contract, both Tosin and Bradley are off.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? I mean, you know, the plan from the start, I'm going to go back to history, teach kids about history, blah, blah, blah. That all went to pot. Yeah, we're going to shoot it in a new format. It's going to look different. It's going to look... That all went to pot. You know, everything they did went to pot, basically. It was all nonsense. And as I said, without a shadow of a doubt, you cannot deny it now. This version of Doctor Who failed spectacularly. Do you want to hear that again? This Doctor Who failed spectacularly. There's no way. Yeah.
Unarguable. And it's been the entire franchise has been next to mortally wounded, really, by Chris Chibnall's various creative decisions and the laughably bad casting of Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. It's time, I think, that we cleansed our palates for a couple of minutes. And we're going to take a quick break, a moment or two, to remind you of some of the other fantastic conversations that are taking place on other podcasts across the Fandom Podcast Network. So here's a few words about all of that, and then you can meet us back here for more chitter-chatter about Doctor Who.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to these other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, discussing the latest in entertainment pop culture. Bloody Kings, Immortals Take Notice, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theaters, where we celebrate our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie and TV pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville show. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our show covering the time-traveling Doctor Who universe with host Dan Hadley. Lethal Mullet, an 80s and 90s action film podcast with host Adam P. O'Brien. Also check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast with hosts Scott, Derek, and Nathan. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. And check out our newest shows, The Fandom Show, our monthly Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube exclusive show about the month's hottest topics in fandom, and the FPN True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related Marvel television and streaming MCU universe, including the connections to the original Marvel comics. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on several platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel to receive notifications of new podcast episodes and live events. You can enjoy all of the Fandom Podcast Network audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPod Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
Yes, we've teased and tantalized you there, as always, and we can even clothe you too. There's merch to match all of those shows, including Type 40. If you head over to teepublic.com, search for the Fandom Podcast Network, and you'll find a store full of all the team colours for all of those shows, on everything from the T-shirts to phone cases, tapestries, and a galaxy full of other items. Seeing is believing. Treat yourself, treat your other selves, and it all goes to support the Fandom Podcast Network into the bargain. So everybody wins, everybody wins. Yes, and I'm back here with Kyle, with Ian, and with the Rabbi, talking about the up-to-the-minute news with Doctor Who. It's our big summer news catch-up. More to come, everybody, more to come. So yes, this is the cast of Doctor Who that we're going to get this autumn. They look so excited, don't they? No wonder we can barely contain ourselves. I'll tell you somebody else he can't contain himself. We talk about people who run defense for this shocking era, even in its death throes. We've got one such guy with another quote. This was so this was from the Radio Times again. This was from Hugh Fullerton. Hugh Fullerton at the Radio Times, Rabbi, and he said a couple of days ago that a brand new generation of Doctor Who was coming soon. Don't know if anybody spotted that in a big headline. So he'd taken the press release, and this being the Radio Times, any tiny bit of news, any tiny morsel, they will spin that out into 6 or 7 actual articles to get us clicking away with no real substance to them. So something of this size, they had a positive field day. But Hugh Fullerton overreached himself and claimed that the BBC had stated that the next Doctor Who, and who was going to be the showrunner, who was going to be the Doctor, that it would all be announced and coming soon. They never said that. We've got the actual bottom of the press release here, but here's where Hugh got that from. And I thought this was awful that he sort of misrepresented this, because right at the bottom of that press release, all it says officially, this is the only word we've got on anything past those specials, which take us up to the autumn of 2022 for the BBC centenary. That's when we're getting that last Jodie Whittaker special. All we have from the BBC is, we will announce plans for the new generation of Doctor Who in due course. Watch this space. Due course could be any length of time whatsoever. I think it's very doubtful that we're going to get something, for example, before the end of this year, because Doctor Who has, for those who haven't been paying attention, effectively it's been taken out of production. I don't want to use the word cancelled, but it has been taken out of production. What's your reading of this, Kyle?
The BBC has no clue at this point, and I think this is all fallout from Chibnall. I think I was going to address it before we went to break, but Chris Chibnall is the man who completely changed the entire history of Doctor Who in one episode. And from that moment on, any chance he had of recovering the fandom of Doctor Who was gone, because he insulted everybody who was a fan of Doctor Who across the board, in my opinion, when he did that.
Insulted by the Timeless Children. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And who knows what he has in store the rest of the way. I mean, the BBC might be thinking, we're at a point we can't go backwards from this. Do we just let this run and then let the next person find a way to write themselves out of this mess? I mean, that could be it. And again, it leads me back to, if J. Michael Straczynski at least wants to come in and do one season of Doctor Who to write them out of this mess, please do it, because I don't think there's a lot of people who want to even try to attempt to recover the damage Chris Chibnall has done to the history of Doctor Who.
I think the BBC are so stupid, right? I think the BBC are so stupid and so stuck in their idiot ways that they would look at an incredible gift horse of J. Michael Straczynski, who is the perfect person right now to come into, like, try and put back together the mess that they've made, right? And I just don't think they can admit they got it wrong. I don't think they can admit they got it wrong in this way. I don't think Piers Wenger is going to be able to take any responsibility. I think they're going to dump it all on Chris Chibnall and go, well, Chris Chibnall wrote something a bit too radical for the racists to watch the show, right? That's what they think. And they go, well, we've got to do something a bit more subtle so to not upset the racists. I really believe that's how they look at it, because they're morons. How do we know they're morons? Because they're television executives. So, in fact, saying they're television executives is also code for saying they are low-life, immoral morons. So, that's, I think, what we've got to look forward to. But fortunately, the apocalypse might come, which I'm pretty sure is going to happen before they can make more Doctor Who, right? So, we just fingers crossed, baby, fingers crossed.
So the ratings for Doctor Who on BBC One have taken a considerable tumble. There are people trying to spin this all the time. The aforementioned Hugh Fullerton at Radio Times, for example. We've still got 6 episodes left to come in the next run. I can't help but think it's going to be considerably worse. The audience on BBC America, Kyle, is practically in single digits. So do you think BBC America will want to continue being involved in whatever this new generation of Doctor Who is to come?
I think they have to be, because it's one of the biggest. It's still one of the biggest things they market here in the U.S. I mean, it's amazing. Well, the only thing right now that's keeping BBC America afloat is Star Trek reruns.
Wow, it's got that bad.
All they show on BBC America now is Star Trek reruns and movies. There's not any original BBC. When BBC
they
America
used to
first
have
came out,
Dirk Gently, Killing Eve, all those shows.
Yeah,
all
and it isn't. It's reruns. It's reruns, and for some of it, I understand is the COVID situation and the lack of new content, but they don't have anything to market, and it's sad. And again, Doctor Who has been it's so frustrating because there's so many fans of Doctor Who in this country, but they've all been they're out. And there's a lot of people in this country who would love to see like Warner step up now with Discovery, and because of their history with Doctor Who, or one of these huge studios come in and just throw so much money at the BBC they can't say no.
I think they know what to do, and I think they know what's right. But I think Piers is probably going to be fighting our side. He's going to be fighting our side, I reckon. But he's against most of the BBC, most of the people that are in charge, because they're all for this kind of agenda thing. And that's the big fight that we're not going to see. I hope that sense will make it to the BBC, and they will cast a male back into this role, and especially a white male, because I believe that's who the Doctor is. And I hope they do that, but it doesn't look likely, and it's a shame, really, because Doctor Who's such a great show, and they're gonna double down, I reckon. But fingers crossed that they don't.
That was going to be my final question, really. What predictions, short term and long term, are you for Doctor Who?
I believe that there's going to be someone out there fighting, and he's gonna have common sense on his side. But knowing the BBC as I know them, they're going to just ignore the common sense, and they're going to double down. Unfortunately, I think that's where it's going. And I hope not. But you know what, right? If it does go that way, you got the rabbi, he'll do a video on it. You got all these YouTubers who'll do a video on it, but thousands will be watching instead of millions. Do you know what I mean? And that's going to hurt the BBC until they realize that is not the way to go. Until all this stupid agenda comes out of our entertainment, this is what we're going to have to put up with, I'm afraid. That's what I think.
Because, Kyle, for all that, you are very much Mr. Streaming. You're a big advocate of streaming platforms, ahead of physical media, and have been for a while. And for all that broadcasting is changing, some of the excuses that we get given for lower ratings, for few people watch TV, all that kind of people will still turn up to watch good stuff, won't they? Line of Duty in this country still gets big ratings, one of several shows that do.
Well, here's the thing, and I can tell it from the States. I don't know how big the streaming world is in your areas of the world, but here in the US, streaming is taking over. The streaming universe is completely taking over. Broadcast TV is almost original content is barely on broadcast TV anymore. The content's going to broadcast TV is reality shows, game shows, things like that are cheap and affordable to make. Except for a few things like the FX channel, which of course now a lot of their premium stuff is going to FX on Hulu, again for the streaming thing. Like for example, the upcoming Y the Last Man adaptation of the Brian K. Vaughan amazing comic book run.
Awful! Oh my god!
I wonder why they're making that. Hey, let's all think about this. Why are they making that show?
They've been trying to make that for years.
What do you think?
Yeah, but they've been trying to make that for years.
I know, but now they've got the green light. Why do you think that is?
There's a lot behind that one that I can bring up on the podcast. But the thing of it is that the BBC's this is make or break time, I think, for Doctor Who, as far as being anything that we've known it for the BBC and things like that. I think if the BBC drops the ball again, the vultures are going to start really coming out. And I'm talking about the big names. I'm talking about Amazon. I'm talking about Netflix. I'm talking about Apple. All these places that are looking to throw tons, and I mean tons of, right, back up the money truck, because they are all looking for original content that they can put on there exclusively on their streaming services. And Doctor Who is
intellectual property.
Exactly. And Doctor Who is screaming there, and there are people screaming, please make this happen, because they're going to have more freedom. They're not going to have the budgetary constraints, and the creators are going to be able to create. I mean, whether you like some of the agendas on some of these things, when you watch some of these streaming shows in the U.S., whether it's, for example, The Boys, which takes no shame in what it does. You look at the premium stuff that HBO does.
It's made with 100% conviction, isn't it? And that's something that we haven't had from Doctor Who in the last couple of years.
And that's where those creators are going. They're going to a streaming service because they have more freedom, and you don't have something like the BBC pulling the strings. They are high. What you're seeing here is they are hiring creators. Netflix is signing TV creators from network TV that created some of the most popular shows here in the States to exclusive deals to create content for them. So it's content that's driving everything, at least here in the US. And Doctor Who, which if done properly, could be back to where it was just 5-6 years ago. And so the money truck is there. The vultures are waiting. I think it's just a matter of, to the BBC makes it to where if they fail again, I think that the Doctor Who's so far gone, they might not have a choice but to take the money, because I know that the BBC is in a whole mess right now.
Is there any appetite for Series 13 in America, do you think?
I think again, it comes down to this. Now that they know Jodie is leaving, I think you actually will get some viewers back because, we're coming up to a Doctor change. There's always a curiosity there with a Doctor change. But again, it's going to be who they announce next as the Doctor, and that's so key. And from what you see on the internet, I mean, it goes anywhere from going back to a male lead, a Caucasian male lead, and a male lead of an ethnic descent, or possibly I've even heard the rumors of a lead of a different sexual identity or no sexual identity. I don't know, and it just depends on what the BBC is going to do. And I don't know if anybody. The BBC is their own worst enemy at this point. People don't want to work with the BBC because they know that the problems with the BBC and how the BBC is. And I just don't know if somebody who's a true creator is going to want to come in and really deal with that, or they're going to have to bring in
way through all that the way the JMS is struggling with after just a couple of days.
Yeah. The general. I mean, when you have somebody who's as creatively powerful as JMS, I don't think the BBC wants to bring him in because they couldn't stand up to him.
Rabbi,
that's
apart from the pressing concern of inevitable Armageddon, have you got any predictions for? Have you got any predictions for the next 3 or 4 years with Doctor Who?
3 or 4 years, nothing firm. I mean, obviously we're going to get the 6 episode. I think the 6 episode season is going to be epically awful. I think it's going to be insanely bad for Doctor Who, and we're going to see the worst ratings ever. I mean, that's a little bit of wish fulfillment for me because I do like a bit of Schadenfreude. But it just seems they're like setting everything up to fail, and it's not like it was doing well to start with. Next year, I think it's going to be even worse for Doctor Who because, like Carl in England, the BBC has gone from being this beloved institution. It was absolutely beloved to being reviled, like just reviled and hated.
They're reviled here in the States.
Yeah, but they used to be loved. They used to be absolutely, and then not long ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, absolutely loved. And the idea of getting rid of it was awful to people. But Doctor Who has become the face of that failure, right? As more than anything else. And I think they're putting in that its big 100-year anniversary, the BBC's 100-year anniversary celebrations. The Jewel in the Crown will be the final Jodie Whittaker episode. Yeah.
But that was written by the press or whoever's in charge of.
No, but I think they were right then. November's about the time, right? They've got. I think that's.
I'm not even sure it's going to be that big a part of that. So I think that season will last for a few months, and I think this will be a drop in the ocean too. I think there'll be big gala events for that with people like David Attenborough and those kind of people, right? Top level people. I think the Doctor Who thing will be a very, very small part of it. I mean, we're living in a time where the Doctor and all evidence of the current era can't even make it to the front of its own annual anymore. We've just got the TARDIS sat in a pretty nondescript graphic rather than the face of the actual sitting Doctor. So
the BBC is going to be watching or listening to this. All I can say is, if you want to save Doctor Who, hire me. That's all I can say. I'll save it for you.
The BBC was listening.
They were at one point. Yeah.
After the announcement that Jodie was going, apparently all our channels were being monitored by the BBC.
Yeah. I'll be cheap. I'm cheap.
Happy to amuse and show them how it's done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Rates are very reasonable. Contact.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. for anybody out there we will be covering it. We will be covering it on Type 40 and Type 40 Live. Not sure how yet, which format and which voices you're going to hear talking about it. But yeah, Doctor Who Series 13 will be made up of 6 new episodes. It's going to star Jodie Whittaker, Mandip Gill, and John Bishop with Jacob Alexander, the poor sod. Its showrunner will be the world's worst showrunner, Chris Chibnall, and it's set to be broadcast sometime this autumn. Yes, Type 40 will be there. We will be covering it. Listen up for that once we can work out who and where and what. That is the old girl starting up and calling time on another trip in our TARDIS. I'll be back with another Type 40, of course, very, very soon. Look out for that wherever you found this. It could have been on Apple Podcasts. It could have been on Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, iHeart Radio, Stitcher, all those places, or on the dedicated home feed for Type 40, type40.podbean.com. We're also on YouTube, the world's largest streaming platform, on the Spacebook's YouTube channel and on the Fandom Podcast Network's YouTube channel. We're still on the fabulous Fandom Podcast Network's Master Feed, along with all those other shows, of course. Maybe you'd like to have your say. Reach out to us all at Type 40 through our social media presence, Instagram and Twitter at Type 40 Doctor Who, or you can email us, type40doctorwho@gmail.com. And if you're feeling really brave, search for us over on Facebook for the Type 40 Facebook group. So type our name into the little field at the top and you can find our community, our TARDIS full of companions from throughout the Whoniverse, talking, sharing, and occasionally arguing about all things Doctor Who. That's been going for 5 years now. And whatever goes on with the series, there's always plenty to talk about. Classic, new, or not Who in Type 40, a Doctor Who Facebook group. What else? Kyle, where can people hear and see more of you?
Well, obviously, I've got to keep the wheels turning here at the Fandom Podcast Network, so you can hear me on several of the great shows there, including our newest show, True Believers, covering everything that is the MCU. We're getting ready to dive into What If, as that's getting ready to start up here. We've got, of course, our great relationship with you at Type 40 and several other great shows. FPNet.podbean.com. You can find me personally on Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram at AKyleFandom.
Ian, where can people hear more, see more of you and your work?
Me? Well, everybody knows that I have a web series called Rebecca Gold. All you have to do is type it into YouTube and type in Rebecca Gold and you'll find the series. I'm really surprised, actually. In the last few days, I've had more subs. I think I've had 10 more people sub in my channel, which is interesting because I don't really do live streams, but I guess they see me on other live streams, so they sub. And also some nice comments about the Rebecca Gold series as well, which is really nice. So there you go. I also have some films as well. If you're interested in watching them, they're on the channel as well. Knock yourself out.
I think I'd rather watch 6 episodes of Rebecca Gold than of Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who myself by some considerable way. Rabbi, what's going on?
That's not really a hard choice now, is it?
No, it's not.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that's a fair compliment.
What's going on your planet in the coming weeks, Rabbi, on YouTube?
In the coming weeks, there's just this unending articles lambasting the current era of Doctor Who, which I'm covering, or like trying to run defense for it so badly, just so insanely badly, or coming up with the stupidest ideas possible for season 14. My favorite one right now is Vinay Patel for showrunner. And that's actually a real thing. It's somebody I'm like, what? Why? I don't know.
Vinay Patel, who just a few months ago, Rabbi, he was starting fights with other fans, with actual Doctor Who fans, with the punters and the license fee payers on Twitter. Right.
Just after Tim Davies said they're not allowed to do that anymore. So go. Just goes to show you. So anyway, listen. Go to YouTube. Check out. Search the Rabbi from Another Planet. If you go for Indiegogo and search the Rabbi from Another Planet, you will find my comic books if they're still online. The campaign's closing soon. Or go to Twitter at Biblical Comics with an X at the end. You will find me. Are you going to be happy that you found me? I don't know. But you will find me there in the lair, like Smaug from Lord of the Rings, hoarding over my gold.
There's only one way to find out, isn't there? And you can find me. I'm scattered throughout all of space and time, but mostly on Instagram and Twitter as the Spacebook, where I'm wheezing and groaning and sharing about all things geeky inside and outside of the TARDIS. Thanks again, everybody. And thanks, as always, to you for listening, for watching. We always have the time, if you have the space, here at Type 40. But that is it for now. Take care. Bye-bye. And I never get this ready in time. I never get this ready in time for the end of the show.